if you want to record it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our ICPHSO webinar, and thanks for joining us today on this webinar. My name is Mark Schoem. I'm the Executive Director of ICPHSO. For the past year, ICPHSO has been honored to continue distributing the KID Design Safety Toolkit. It's a fantastic resource that helps both business and non-business groups think about safety from the very start of the product design. We're thrilled to make the toolkit available free of charge to everyone. Today also marks the beginning of Nancy Cowles' new role as ICPHSO Toolkit Coordinator. Many of you know Nancy as a past ICPHSO president and as the Executive Director of Kids in Danger. Nancy will be leading the way in helping ICPHSO promote the toolkit to get the most out of this valuable resource. And guiding today's discussion is Molly Lynyak, ICPHSO board member and ASTM International Manager of Technical Committee Operations. Together, Nancy and Molly will give us a quick look at how the toolkit can be used to advance product safety in real-world settings. And with that, I'll turn it over to Molly.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I just want to remind everyone that the session is being recorded, so it will be available if you want to take a look after the session. Also, we will be using the chat and Q&A, so if you have questions, please do not be shy. You can enter them in either section, the chat or the Q&A, and we'll take some time at the end to get to them. So today's session, we really plan to cover what the safety toolkit covers, how to access it, and what sort of benefits you would achieve by completing the course. And I am honored to be joined by Nancy Cowles, who's going to walk us through that today. I don't think Nancy needs much of an introduction, but for those of you who have not worked with Nancy, she is the former executive director of Kids in Danger, which is a nonprofit that was dedicated to protecting children by improving children's product safety. Now, as a retired yet continuing consumer advocate, Nancy has over 30 years experience in consumer product safety and was instrumental in the passage of the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act. Nancy is the past president of ICPHSO and a recipient of the Ross Kozer Award and the ICPHSO Advocacy Award. So please welcome me and please join me in welcoming Nancy as one of our main speakers for today's event.
Thank you, Molly. Happy to be here and speaking with everyone.
So I think we're going to kick off with a poll question just to help us get a sense of who is on today's call and what category you represent. So on your screen, you'll see the question itself, and then there's a pop-up that will allow you to answer and select an option. And we're going to give it about 10 seconds just so people can locate the poll. I see the responses coming in. All right, we'll give it about 5 more seconds. Looks like it's slowing down a little bit. All right, and if we can publish the results, that would be great. If not, I can happily report the results. And it looks like the largest number of folks on the call represent the retailer community, followed by manufacturers, technical experts, consumer advocates, and other. And if you're someone that falls into that other category, if you could just put in the chat what category that is, that would be helpful for us to know so we can make sure that we are getting the toolkit in front of all of the different types of stakeholder groups. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close the poll. And we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. And with that, Nancy, I'm going to sort of start to ask you about the toolkit and what the purpose was, sort of what your goal was when you developed this program and what you were hoping to achieve.
Yeah, thank you, Molly, and thanks for that nice introduction. So as many of you know about Kids in Danger, most of our work was facing towards consumers, caregivers, giving them the tools they need to keep their children safe, understanding what went into product safety, how to safely choose products, what to do if something goes wrong. But throughout that time that KID was running, we got a lot of calls from mostly entrepreneurs, but also small companies and things who often had a great idea for a product and wanted to talk to somebody about it. These are often ideas that came to them in their role as parents or caregivers, things that they thought would help, their own time with their children. So we came, some of the things that kind of made us start thinking about this project were things like self-feeding positioning pillows. So like leaving the baby alone with a bottle in a bib-like thing that held the bottle. Sleep products that had little protection against suffocation or entanglement. Even nursing, one product was a nursing cover that kept out most light and even a lot of the noise for the baby, but unfortunately with that, most of the air for the baby too. So it was clearly something that needed a little more thought. All of them were well-intentioned. They really thought that this was something that would make parenting easier, that children would be engaged with if it was a toy. Some of them knew about CPSC and standards. A lot of them didn't know anything about that. But what they often missed was taking real world use into the development of the product. And we see this with big companies too, because it's very different to consider something in a lab or, just discussing what the design would be like, and then thinking about how is this going to be used in a consumer's home? How much supervision will there really be when the child is using this product? And so we thought that to pull together what we were telling people, because when these people called us, we gave them, what information, pointed them your way, Molly, to ASTM, pointed them to CPSC, talked about the things that we had learned. And so we decided to go ahead and develop the toolkit. This slide just gives a little background, so that you kind of understand the transition to ICPHSO, which we were so thrilled that they were willing to take it on. And I'm so happy now to still be working with it because I love this toolkit. I think it's an amazing guidance for people. This also has our funders on it, which is why we were able to make something that I think is so complete and visually appealing and easy to follow, is that we did have funding for it, both from the groups on the screen as well as KID's regular supporters. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the objective of, yes, what was the goal? The objective, our overreaching goal was to reduce risk, to make sure that we would stop seeing products in the market that, because of their design, ended up with a flaw or a way that a child could use it or a parent could use it that would be unsafe. So reduce the risk to children and reduce the risk to companies too, because then they wouldn't have to deal with a recall or other actions. And also to get people to start thinking about integrating safety from the very initial concept of the product. It's going to be much easier if you're thinking about safety as you start to design it than if you have to retrofit it, because when you do your testing, you find problems with it. Creating a safety mindset. And then primarily as consumer advocates is really to understand what your product's use looks like in a home, in other environments. Is it going to be left outside in the rain? What are the things that could affect the safety of the product? So that was our objective in doing that. Yeah, so I think we can go to the next slide and your next question, Molly.
Yeah, I think that's a great overview, and I'm curious to know, since the tool launched, who has been using it and who was the intended audience when you were developing it?
Yeah, as I mentioned, what we were thinking of is people that wouldn't have access, because we weren't looking to replace the work consultants do or other people who help design products, the companies themselves, the standard setting organization, the larger organizations of product manufacturers. We were really looking to get this to people who hadn't thought of any of these things or had no context in terms of developing a product. So entrepreneurs, most of them parent entrepreneurs or momtrepreneurs, which I think some people call them, But we found after it was launched, and even as we were working on it, that small or mid-sized companies that didn't have access to a lot of additional resources found it useful. Even larger companies found it useful. Some large companies came to us and said that they actually use it for onboarding new engineers and new people in their product safety world. And then people that maybe are transitioning from making a different kind of product to making children's products. As you know, there are many things to making children's products that maybe you don't have to deal with other products. When you think about if this is in a child's hand and no one is there, will they still be safe? So really anyone who makes products used by kids. And now with our move to ICPHSO, we're hoping to in the future to, look at how it can be expanded to address other product design as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we get a lot of questions about standards and how to apply them, what to use, how do they even know where to start? And it's often people who have really great ideas for a new product, or maybe a new innovative design of a product. And this has been a great resource to be able to provide to them as they're sort of getting started in the product safety journey that they're going down. So tell me a little bit about how the course was developed and who was involved in helping you put it together.
Yeah, thanks. This, as I said, is something I've thought about all through my time with KID, and we had put together very effective training tools for parents and caregivers, and so I thought this would be an opportunity to put together something, again, for people that maybe don't have access to other things. So we started with a small team from our board of directors. We also started right before COVID, right before the pandemic, and so that kind of slowed us down a little. But if you go to the next slide, we pulled together an advisory committee, and you'll recognize some of these names, I'm sure, if you've been involved in product safety. And they really helped us to narrow down what we want to do, to focus it. Many of them were also participants in the toolkit itself, and gave us the wide-ranging experience and knowledge that we needed to make sure that we were covering what we needed to cover in the toolkit. So we worked with them and, many other people. I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say with that. If you go to the next slide, these are the people that actually contribute or are part of the toolkit in different ways. Speakers on panels. We did, a lot of one-on-one interviews with some people. Other people, Scott Milkovich, whose name you'll see there was a panelist, but he also created a great tool for us, which is something you can 3D print once you've gone through the toolkit. So it really was a group effort, and KID didn't have the experience to do this, but as you can see, we really were able to pull in people that knew a lot and were able to do that.
It's really a
So
nice cross section of the industry. And I know from personally taking the course, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, what it looks like when you're in the platform, but it's really interactive. There's a lot of different modalities to the learning, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated about how you laid out the different learning paths.
I think
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we're actually ready for the next poll. So that brings us to the question about, in terms of product safety, for those on our session today, what is one of your biggest challenges? And again, you should get a pop-up on your screen. And we'll give it about 15 seconds so people can take an opportunity to look at that. Right, we'll give it about 5 or 6 more seconds. I still see some responses coming in, and I see the response on which standards and regulations to apply as one of the leading responses. So if it's standards, come to me. If it's regulations, we have a ton of great partners at our government agencies we can link you up with. All right, so we'll go ahead and close that, but it looks like standards and regulations are one area. The next biggest area people are responding is a clear picture of real world use, which we'll get into, and then product design and development being the largest. So let's maybe go to the next slide then, and Nancy, you can tell us what it really looks like to access the program. What am I going to see when I sign up? Tell me more about like the actual course itself.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And, I'm just going to run through this set of slides. It gives a lot of ideas of what's in there, but it really is something that you can go to when you first go to it. And the URL has stayed the same, kidsafetytoolkit.org. You can also access it from the ICPHSO pages, but you can go directly to the site. This is an interactive course, so there are quizzes along the way. There are different types of delivery of the information, and then at the end there are a lot of resources, so you can go at your own pace. The first module, which is the biggest one, the main toolkit, we divided up into these 4 areas. This is how KID always divided our information to parents, and so we use the same thing, whether they're products used at home, for sleep, when you're out and about, or for play. And each of those have different information in them. As I said, there are quizzes. The best part of the toolkit, it is completely free, and that was actually one of the things we, wanted to continue as it moved to ICPHSO, is that part of the appeal to it is that anyone can do it. You can have 20 people from your company do it if you're with a big company. You can have people you work with do it without worrying that you're going to have to pay for all of it. So can you go to the next slide? So, and as Molly said, this is what I think, and this comes from years, Molly, frankly, of sitting in ASTM meetings or other places and hearing people talk about a product. There'd been, an incident reported, and you would hear, well, the parents should have been watching them. They shouldn't use it that way. That isn't what we intended. All of those are true statements. It doesn't change the fact that in the real world, everything isn't always perfect. And so we really try and get across to them that your product will be used in any way a child, especially with toys or other products, if it looks like it's meant to be a certain way, if it's similar to another product the parent has already used, and so they think it's going to be similar, they often won't read the instructions unless they need to put it together. We all don't need to talk about warnings because we know parents, all of us skip warnings a lot of time. And so sometimes we just give that up and say, well, they should be doing those things. But really, if you start thinking with a safety mindset, then at the beginning of the product development, you can get a lot of those hazards out and move on with a much safer product. So next slide. And this is something I've learned again, that parents and caregivers are acting on intuition. Either someone they know had the product, told them how to use it, it looks like something they'd done. They went out and got a new bassinet because the baby hated sleeping in the big crib when they were tiny, so they got something else. They're going to set it up and use it. And so that's why these beginning of the process things are so important in terms of how you design it, how you package it, marketing, assembly, and supervision. It has to be an intuitive use of the product. The safe use should be the most intuitive use of the product. So, next slide. This is a center point, I know, for all of us of safety, is the design safety hierarchy. And so this graphic here we use to kind of have the people in the program kind of think through if they can eliminate the hazard. And if you go to the next slide, these are 3 examples, real life examples. Many of you, if you're in children's products, of the problem with strollers where children were getting their fingertips amputated from a hinge that had been on the product for a long time. But the standards process was able to develop a new standard that required hinges that didn't have the catch points for children's fingers. So they completely eliminated that hazards from the product. Other hazards, like the fact that a child is up high in a high chair and might fall, we are pretty effective at guarding against it with effective restraints. And then, you can't eliminate small parts in all products. We do eliminate them for children under 3, but that warning that's on those products for older children so they don't give it to younger children is a key part of the safety of that. So something else that we cover. Next. One of the next couple of slides are things that I think are not directly safety related, but are important, especially for entrepreneurs. And so we had some experts on product research come and talk and are part of the different panels, as well as providing additional information that you really have to, at every step of the way, get consumer feedback on what you're making so that you don't get to the end and realize you'd missed something early on. So while you're developing ideas, while you're developing the product, and then before you launch it. And one of the things in the toolkit is a resource that lays out how you can do this kind of research no matter what your budget is. If you have no budget, if you have a small budget, or if you have the funds to do a larger research project. So that's something that we think is useful to a lot of the people using it. Next slide. And then this is my favorite thing to bring up because I see this a lot, and I think other views on the list that I've seen are concerned about this too. You can make the product as safe as you want, but if your marketing team or the influencers you contract with to market it aren't showing it being used safely, all your good work goes to waste. So, and it's not only your product itself, but making sure that in your commercials, in your ads, that whatever is in the picture is safe. We worked with one company because one of their ads for a completely unrelated product showed a dad kind of checking in on a baby in a very unsafe sleep situation. We were able to tell, you can't show that because you're just normalizing it for families, and they took it down. So you want to work with your marketers as well, and we have a lot of advice on that. Next slide. I'm trying to think, Molly, if this is where, this is just a couple more things that are in it, and then we have a few more questions too. So this is the entrance. You'll see there's a little video you can click on to learn about the impetus, kind of the background of the project, as well as what's going to be in it. So next slide. These are the modules for the toolkit. The first one, which is our big safety thing, the foundation. So you go through these one by one, you take a quiz, you move to the next one. And I'm sorry, that looks too hard to read, and I apologize for not making that easier to read, but you can see it up close, hopefully. Next slide. And then after we finished and launched the first section, we really felt there was a need for more product-specific information. And so we did 4 product-specific modules about at-home products, sleep, out and about, where we deal with environmental factors and things, and then play, so that you can get a deeper dive on that and get into that information.
So
Next
Nancy,
slide.
just a quick
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
When we were looking at the slide with the different sections, that I think there was 5 or 6 sections there.
Yeah.
Do I have to do it in one setting, or can I stop and come back? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Molly. You can do it at your own pace. So we do have people that start it and finish it. Altogether, that's probably under 4 hours. So some people just sit down and do it. Other people, do it in a different way, snatch a bit here where you can stop, after, so one section may have 4 or 5 different things that come together. You can do one and come back and do it another time. So you can really work at your own speed. You do have to get all the way through it to get to the resource section and other things, because we don't want people to kind of cherry pick what they're looking for, but get the whole picture. But as I said, the big one is 4 or 5 hours. The smaller ones are all an hour or so.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next slide.
So tell me about standards. I have to ask, as the standards nerd on the call. How did you incorporate standards into the discussion in the learning session?
Yeah, and Molly, that standards are so important, especially with children's products, and so much work has gone into them that they really do address most of the problems that can be found with children's products, and we find new ones. We develop the standards further. So in many of the conversations, standards come up. So we do roundtables in the first one with safety experts. Many of them bring up standards. In our resources, there's a whole section on how they can access standard information from your website. On our regulators page, there are links to both the US regulators as well as the EU, Australia, other places. And then in part 2, which are the segments with the specific types of products, in each of those 4, we have a short discussion between Molly and Dave Gouda, who is the Deputy Director of KID, talking about the role of standards in that particular type of product. And so we have a little more in-depth and engaging conversation to identify how standards might be used in developing your product, both to make sure it's safe, but also it gives you good ideas for what problems have cropped up in the past and how they were dealt with.
Yeah,
I don't know
great
if you want
point.
to add anything, Molly. You're the
No,
standards
and I
expert.
mean, I don't, it's a shameless plug, obviously, but there are many standards organizations out there, and I know you talk about some of the other ones as well, UL and some of the other organizations that do really important work in this field. So maybe we'll shift a little bit to course completion. Like, let's say I finish the entire program, what happens?
Well, you get this cute little badge you can put on your social media and brag to your friends. So when you are done with the course, one, you get access to the resource section, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you also do get this this badge to put on. But you also can print out a certificate of completion. So if this is something that would be useful with your employer or with getting, credit for having done some additional work for your company, you can have a certificate that you can give to whoever needs it. And then, as I said, on social media, your email signature, that places you can have this small badge.
That's awesome. And a great way to promote the course as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you maybe just one more question because I do want to make sure we have time for the Q&A. And that is, what kind of resources does this program offer that you can't get anywhere else?
Yeah, if we could, this is some of the resources. One of the things is just that I think is special about it is the wide range of experts that we brought in, and we're able from all types of things they do with the work. Some people are scientists, some people are healthcare providers, some people have led companies. So I think the resources are the people that are in the toolkit, but we also have a lot of things that they have provided. So we have, for instance, a guide and the resources on how to make sure your safety doesn't fall apart at the manufacturer level, how to vet your manufacturers and make sure that they're doing what you're asking them to do. Many of the main points we have worksheets on. I love this one here. I don't know if you can see on the bottom of the 3rd sheet. This is I can't remember who presented this, but it's called the Swiss cheese model for a safety standard, so that you really try and different things you do will prevent some hazards, but you need to kind of layer your protection. And then in the middle is the gauge I was talking about. This is a gauge developed by an engineer, Scott Milkovich, who now teaches here in Illinois. And it provides, a big opening for testing toys. It has a fingertip, to make sure kids can't get their fingers stuck. It has an eardrum gauge, which I don't think exists other places, to make sure you're not making something that could go in the ear of a young child and puncture it. And there's 3D instructions for printing that. At the London ICPHSO, if any of you are going to be there, Geraldine Kosh, who worked closely with us on this, has printed some out to have them there. But you can also just get the instructions if you have access to a library with the printing ability.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have to find Geraldine and take a look at that. I have plenty more questions, but I do want to open it up so folks can put your questions in the chat, the Q&A, or if you would like to ask your question, you can come off mute or raise your hand and I think we can unmute you. And while we're waiting for people to do that, maybe I'll ask one question. You already said that the course is at no cost. It's freely available. Do you know if this course is eligible for any CEUs or CLEs? Has that been discussed?
We talked about that a lot. We did not pursue that again. KID, as you know, had to close for lack of it. It wasn't something we could do, but I'm hoping as we move forward, and Mark might want to speak to that, we can look for that opportunity, especially maybe as we develop more specific parts of it. So, Mark, I don't know if you want to talk to that or anything else. I know ICPHSO has some other ideas too for.
ICPHSO has started talking among our executive committee about certain incentives or motivations for people to take this course and complete it. That's a work in progress. We're hopeful that we may be able to provide some incentive that would involve either our membership or conference attendance for the future. So we'll continue to talk about that.
Awesome, thank you. And there's a question that was posted asking, are there any plans to incorporate ISO, IEC, SEN, SENELEC standards into design guidance? I mean, I'll start off and say, I think that's a great idea to have, focus on some of our more international standards as well. Maybe that's something we can put on our sheet to look at for future enhancements. But Nancy, did you want to comment?
I think that's a great idea to look at. And I noticed even when I was prepping for this, since we published this, there is now a whole new regulatory agency in the UK that we don't have listed. And so, as well as some changes at CPSC, that some of the resources that we did have listed will need to be changed and things. So there's a lot of things we want to do with it. And I'm hoping that there's an interest at ICPHSO of members and other people that might want to work with us to see what we can do both to promote the toolkit now, but also to see what the next iteration of it might look like and what we could add to it now that ICPHSO is the sponsor of it.
Yeah, great point. And I know we wanted to look at maybe getting a group together to sort of be the champions for this toolkit. And so we are open to suggestions, but we have a few more questions coming in. So the next question is, are there resources within the guide for consistency and execution in addition to the design, i.e. design in theory may be safe and compliant, but for whatever reason during manufacturing, a hazard may inconsistently arise?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have panelists that address that in the panel discussions themselves, as well as in some of the resources that are in the toolkits resource section. So I mentioned the manufacturing guide that talks about this, how you need to test, what you need to do to, when you're testing samples from your manufacturer to make sure you're not getting a golden sample. But also, as you said, to see if some manufacturing process kind of changes it just enough to introduce a hazard where you didn't think there was one. So we do talk a little bit about that. Obviously, a lot of that is probably more detailed than this, but we do, again, point people to where they can get that kind of assistance.
Great. And we have a good question in the chat. Have you received any feedback on ways others have motivated their colleagues to use this toolkit?
That's great. We have heard, for a few years, we would set up a booth at ICPHSO and people would come by and talk to us. I don't know if anyone knows I know people do know, but the history of KID is that the product that killed our founder's son was made by a company, but they used a licensed Hasbro name. And Hasbro came up and told me how they're making sure that their teams now are looking at the toolkit, using it, and kind of taking this real world use and making sure that testing is thing and done it. But other people, I know Geraldine, who I mentioned, is a consultant, and she does training and she has incentives for her team to do it and ask them all to do it, the people who come to her trainings. So there's all kinds of different ways to do that, I think. As I said, some people use it when you're being onboarded, no matter what your level. So there are different ways to make sure that it's a source of knowledge for your whole team, that they can work together on some of these things.
Yeah, great point. So I have a question here that says, use of human factors experts. I'm wondering if maybe they were just wondering if we've considered those in the development of the tool, but maybe you tell me what you think.
Yeah, we did. If you're asking about in development the tool, we did have some people add content to that. Carol Pollock Nelson was one of our committee people who helped us with it. And so we did try and get as much of that as possible, as well as give people who take the toolkit access in our resource section to some of those human factor design available tools that CPSC or other agencies might have.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of great questions that are a good suggestion. So we'll definitely capture these to look at them after the session as well. But this next question is, have we thought about developing a companion toolkit for manufacturing, like such as control charts, process capability studies, etc.?
We have now, so we'll put that on our list for things as ICPHSO kind of takes more of a role in this to think of those. That was not in KID's wheelhouse, so it wasn't part of the first ones.
Yeah, I love all of these ideas. These are
Yeah,
great.
it's great.
Keep them coming. You can absolutely email ICPHSO after the session if you have ideas that you want to share. The email is on the screen. I also want to encourage everyone to, if you haven't, to take and complete the course and post your completion on social and tag ICPHSO, and we'll definitely reshare it and celebrate with you. Okay, we have another question. How deep does the kit go regarding full risk assessment?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a way to formulate that answer right now. I can, if you, that first email on the Q&A slide, email at kidsafetytoolkit.org will come straight to me, and I'm happy to dig into it and send you some more information.
Great. All right, well, we will stay on for another minute or so to see if we have any other questions that come in. And while we do that, I just want to see if there's anything that you want to say in closing, Nancy.
No, I'm very excited that you've come today. I hope that some of you who are engaged with ICPHSO will engage with me through that email or other ways or at one of the conferences as we start to talk about how to really make this a strong tool in ICPHSO's toolkit to help make sure that products are safe. I'm looking forward to working with many of you.
Thank you so much. With that, I don't see any other questions, but again, please reach out after the session if you have thoughts or questions. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Molly, and thank you, Nancy, for sharing the insights and allowing us a little bit a look into the KID Design Safety Toolkit and how it can help integrate safety into the design process. As a reminder to everybody, the toolkit's free and available to everyone at the ICPHSO website, as well as at that KID website that's on the screen. And we encourage you to explore it and take it. And as Molly said, show your certificate when you complete it. Be proud of it. And ICPHSO certainly is in dialogue with Nancy and others to talk about some other incentives, as well as looking to expand it beyond children's products. So great ideas that have come up through this webinar, and we'll certainly get back to everybody and explore what we can do in the future. So again, thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you at a future ICPHSO event. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.